Let's focus.
Okay, so just to get a sense, like, who here has heard of water, or sorry, DeSci, I apologize. Okay, so like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the other people are just kind of curious around why you're just here for the blockchain and interested in science as well. Should we close that door? Okay, so one other question. Who here is like from like an academic background? So like has done like research or been in a university setting or something like that. And when you've been in research, you know that it hasn't really changed much over the past like 600 or 700 years. Like publishing is still done in the same way, and you still have an advisor, and you still have like to publish the paper, and the data is still a bit closed off, and so what I'm sort of getting at with all of this is like the incentives in science right now are kind of not aligned with society's societal needs for what sort of science should be. I mean, like we hope that science is like useful, and we hope that science is replicatable, and we hope that science is equitable to everyone who participates. And so, does this remind anyone of something else, like maybe like the financial system today? So the financial system today, before DeFi, it was you had to KYC, you had to be you had to be an American citizen maybe, you had to do all this random stuff to get access to the financial system. And there's many sort of corollaries between DeFi and what is DeSci. Like we're dealing with a lot of extraneous stuff that has happened over the past 200 years, 300 in science, maybe it's even for 600 or 700 or 800 years, of sort of rules and craft that has built up around this. And DeSci is the sort of taking all of that back and saying, like, how can we attach science to the incentives that society needs, and how can we tokenize it, and how can we reward it? So in a very brief picture, like what is DeSci? It's like imagine a world in which like the internet is a laboratory. So right now we think of a laboratory as just like something that is like you go into Stanford or Harvard or another big school, and you're like, this is where we do our research and we have test tubes. But that's like an old way of thinking about it, right? Like that's like saying like money and value is like dollar bills, but we know that that's kind of not true. We can put money in a bank, you can point and click on E-Trade and trade stocks, and it's a more complicated concept. So I want to like reframe what is like a laboratory. Think of the laboratory as the internet. And one of the problems that came about with like a traditional laboratory, like when you go work at a university, is that the person who funds it has a lot of control, or the people that the hierarchy has a lot of control in the types of ideas that get worked on. But the problem with that is like a lot of people sort of as they age, they only work on the same ideas. And this allows for not a lot of new ideas to be accepted into academia or society. And particularly the government, funding agencies, principal investigators, like the lab owner, are in charge of sort of what gets studied. But in the future, where their internet is a laboratory, anyone with an idea can propose it and say, like, this is what I'm really passionate about, and this is what I want to work on. And they can go about getting funding for it, they can go about getting rewarded for it, and it enables sort of a new type of scientific progress to happen that really hasn't been able to take hold currently. And what I wanted to say is like this isn't far off. Like I think we're really on the cusp of being able to be more self-driven in the way scientific progress can happen. It's kind of like in many ways like GitHub, right? Like before you had to like maybe go work at Microsoft, and you would work on Windows operating system or some other big project, and it was very heavy and convoluted. And then GitHub came along with pull requests, and you could just permissionlessly submit a pull request to something, and get access to lots of code, and the code was very composable and it was permissionless. You didn't have to apply to a university. So it really changed the incentives around. So in the same way that DeFi sort of opened up the financial system, we hope that decentralized science is going to open up the scientific system. And science is a really important thing. Like, science has value. One of the things that's always was a little bit odd to me around decentralized finance is, I create 1 million tokens, and someone else creates 1 million tokens. We swap the tokens. It's a bit of a gambling system. Like, whoever's there for the last day gets stuck with the bag. And the reason it's a gambling system is because, like, no extrinsic information or no value is created just by, like, moving tokens around, right? Like, it's not like, there's nothing like, you're not creating a cure for a disease, you're not building a building or anything. But with decentralized science, you're not just swapping around tokens. These tokens have value, right? Because they're attached to data sets, they're attached to intellectual property, they're attached to algorithms, they're attached to vaccines or whatever. So it's not just, randomly gambling anymore. It's like you're having an insight into some scientific process or something like that. So I want to talk just a moment about traditional science versus decentralized science, and how these things sort of differ a little bit. And there's TradFi, which is traditional finance, and then there's DeSci, TradSci, which is traditional finance, and there's TradSci, which is traditional science. And this is just in order of the process of doing science, but don't necessarily think of it as the most in order of importance, because I think my least favorite part around DeSci is actually the funding, because I think a lot of actually really great science does get funded, and the reason a lot of science doesn't get funded for the most part is because it's not great science, and so the people that are complaining about funding issues are probably just not great scientists, and so we'll start with it here. But anyway, it's like TradSci relies on government and institutions to fund the science, and whereas like decentralized science is like you put up like a GoFundMe, you put up your wallet, you put up any type of thing, and people who are just interested in this. So like a great example right now is longevity, right? Like there's not a ton of research being done on longevity, but there are a lot of people on Twitter who are just excited when Brian Johnson posts new things, and maybe someone has a couple extra $100 to throw around, and they're like, I like what this guy is doing. I want to help fund this or help promote this project. And I think there's like a lot of projects like that, and especially sort of the longer tail stuff, and also for things that might affect certain people. So if maybe someone has a specific disease or a family member has a specific disease, they're very inclined to fund it. Whereas in the traditional model, it's not always clear like how you go about funding a rare disease. Like it just goes to some giant monolithic organization who then sort of disperses it out. The next one is the publication. So DeSci is much different. So in traditional publication, like you write a paper and then you have to pay money to the journal to accept it, and then you also have, and they peer review it, which is kind of in a blind peer review process. And the people who are doing the peer review have no incentive to do a great job peer reviewing. They just, for the most part, and I know peer reviewers, and they try and get done with it as quickly as possible. Because if they do a good job or a bad job, it's indifferent. They don't care. And in the DeSci world, it's much more direct to author. So you publish something on chain, maybe to get access to it, you have to pay a little bit of money, and then that money goes directly to the reviewer, to the person. And there's also new ways of doing publication. So instead of just publishing something, you could have like a prediction market where you could set up a prediction market for a paper and say like, okay, here's my paper. I want people to review it. And if in 3 years this paper has 1,000 citations, the peer reviewer will get more tokens and is able to accurately predict the relevance of this paper in the future. There's just new ways of thinking around how to do publication that aren't just like in this old school style way of doing it. That's peer review. Data sharing. Right now there's this thing around open science and traditional science, but the issue is like no one's paid to maintain these data sets, and the problem with that is that when no one's paid to maintain the data sets, like the PhD student graduates, the lab server goes dead, whatever, and it sort of, you get like a very bad quality data set, which doesn't help with reproducibility. With DeSci, you get data sets that are open, and I think the data sets are going to be paid for, right? So like, I'm going to publish my data, I'm going to publish my Aura Ring data, I'm going to publish my health record online, I'm going to get paid for it. Someone's going to get paid to curate it, and the benefit of paying for it is that you'll be able to review it, the data set, you'll be like, oh, I like this data set 5 stars, I don't like this data set 1 star, I want to return it, and it's like an Amazon system for like data. And so it'll be much easier to like build up high quality data sets with DeSci. And also permissionless, like when it's on the blockchain, anyone can contribute to the project. Whereas when it's in like a traditional lab, there's no way to contribute to something, right? Like you can't go apply to a program and just contribute your data, it's just impossible. Community is important because like I think there's a lot more scientists in the world than we think about that. So right now, the number of scientists that exist is like the number of people who work in R&D, who are affiliated with the university, and some percentage of home scientists. But I think there's actually a lot more people who want to become scientists, who are interested in science, but just don't know how to contribute to science yet. And I think this is a giant underserved population. It's like people who are programmers. Like maybe 20 years ago, we thought of programmers in a very small niche, but now like every job is a programmer, right? Like if you don't program, it's like you're not using this like superpower. And I think it's going to be similar with science. Like in the future, like everyone, a lot more. The number of scientists is actually a lot more than we think. IP is another one. So like the IP is tied to the incentive. So like when you develop a project in like a university, the university gets a third, the department gets a third, and like the PI and I think graduate student get a third. And so there's not a lot of incentive for people to like do a great job, and also getting the IP out of the university is oftentimes really tricky. With decentralized science, the way it works is like you create a project, that whole project is tokenized, and it's clear from the get-go like the who owns what. So people who came up with the idea own a certain percentage of the IP. People that collect the data own a certain percentage of the IP. People that publish it get a certain percentage, and it's very clear, and you can take your IP, trade it however you want, sell it, whatever you want to do with it. But it's much easier, and there's a lower cost to engaging with it. And then reproducibility is obviously like a big thing right now in science. Like if you ask me, I think we're dealing, like you can read many papers about the reproducibility crisis online, but I don't even think that scratches the surface of the problem with reproducibility in science. Like, if you look at a paper, you can't really reproduce it. A PDF is the final artifact for many of the scientific projects, and it should really be a JSON object or something that is machine readable, that can be reproduced, that can be audited, that can have each piece of data has provenance to it, so you can track where it came from. Okay, so we've talked about this like DeSci versus regular science, but now how do we get there? And I think one of the things where will be important is like using memes actually. So memes are a great way of like building, and we're not doing this yet in DeSci, but I think this is one of those important things is like memes have the power to like capture a community and incentivize participation. And I think it's time for DeSci to do the same. And you know, you can speculate on these memes, you can grow a community that's big within a few months, and you can create a community kind of ethos. And this is very similar to like a lab or something. So I think we're going to be seeing like a lot of memes in science, and I think this will be a good thing. Yeah, so we need to like rethink the incentives in science to enable to align it more with like what society wants, in the same way that like DeFi sort of did that. And what makes it work well for crypto and science is like Web3, crypto, decentralized ledgers are all really good at tracking who does what within a project. And I think like that is what's needed in science. Like right now you have a scientific paper and you have 10 authors in the author's paper. You don't know who did what, right? So it's impossible to track. And so that leads to papers that have 1,000 people on it, and like, what does that even mean? Who's responsible? Here you can like track it back to the person who made the mistake, you can fix it, and update it. And that's why like science and blockchain are actually like a really good pair for each other. So the way it works is like each project issues a token. So say we create a project for volcanoes, like we want to like test baking soda and vinegar or something like that. We create a project, we issue a token for it. It has like 1 million tokens, and then we decide like it's a little mini economy within that project for science to happen. We do like resource allocation, and I think right now it's very bespoke around how resources are allocated, but I think there'll be probably like a SAFT or something, like a YC for we'll establish like the person who came up with the idea gets this, the other people that got who did collect the data get this, and like it'll be all just like signing like an NDA or a contractor agreement. Like you'll just go to like Quirky or LegalZoom and like spin up a DeSci project. And then once you have those tokens, like you can vote on which types of experiments you want to do next. So you can say like, okay, so we have this amount of cash in our treasury. Do we want to like test a molecule A or do we want to test molecule B to solve this problem? And then the people who own the tokens will be able to say like, oh, let's do it this way. And then they'll be like, okay, we need to hire an outside person. Like, let's put this up for a vote on who we should hire to do the data analysis. And then that'll be a vote. And so it'll be very democratic in how the science is done. And I think an interesting question is like, will this method work better than just having like the boy genius or whatever in the corner who's like has 100% accuracy? Like, will this democratization process work? And then the other obvious elephant in the room is like, how much will AI play in this? Like, will an AI be able to allocate these tokens and say like, oh, this is like a great idea, just trust me, like this is the thing you want to do. I think an important thing will having like a data pools for each project. So like that will be the core asset of most of these DeSci projects is like a certain type of data in a certain type of format, and it'll be dynamically updated. And then the people whose data it is will also say like, oh, like this is my health record data. I'm okay with publishing it. And there'll be like a little cooperative governance pool of people who are just like really passionate about it. And they're like, yes, we're okay selling our data to Pfizer. We're okay publishing this data in a research project. We don't want to give this data to another lab or whatever. And so they'll have these data pools, which will be sort of the core asset or the crown jewels of each scientific project. And if they make money or something from this, that money will go back to each person that contributed the data. Some things I think would be really interesting for data pools would be like blueprint data, like longevity and like nutrition is one that is like completely not well understood. Wearable and Oura ring data, just because it's like so easy to track, and it would be like you could do sleep research, you could do cardiology research, you could do fitness research with it, and then of course genomic research. Like you're seeing 23andMe like basically go out of business, and all their data is like probably for sale. But it would be really nice if it was like governed by the people that contributed that data. Data quality, so there'll be ways to like stake on data sets. So you can say like, oh, this is a great piece of data. This is a piece of data, but I don't actually believe that this is accurate. So people that when they contribute a piece of data, they'll contribute it with like a small like $5 stake attached with it. And then if someone audits that piece of data and says this data is bad, they'll get slashed. You'll be able to, there'll be like a DeSci exchange where you can like swap and trade different tokens, sort of like CoinMarketCap or Coinbase. And this will allow for like a lot of liquidity within DeSci. Instead of experiments, you'll have like prediction markets. So you'll be like, oh, this is a great experiment. I'm gonna like bet like $20 or whatever that this is the outcome of this, the hypothesis will be true or false. And like this allows you to vote with confidence. So like right now you just like vote and you're like, I think this is true, but I'm not super sure. Whereas this person's like, no, I'm 100% sure. Like I'm YOLOing into this bet around like if this is gonna happen or not. And this will also encourage, like what's cool about this method of doing it is like it's small, right? So like you're gonna want prediction markets that close quickly. And prediction markets that close quickly correlate with experiments that are easy and small to reproduce. No one's gonna bet on something that's like, is the universe gonna collapse of heat death in 30,000 years? No, like it's just not, like no one's gonna care. So this is like, this prediction market is like, will close in like a week, and this will be really important. So if you guys are interested in learning more, we started this DeSci NYC community in New York. We've had a lot of speakers. We've had Martin Shkreli, we've had people from longevity, we've had people who study bees. We've had a lot of really cool speakers, a lot of on focused ultrasound as well. Here's our group chat, our website. Our website has a link to the group chat also if you want to go there, so you can find out more there. And so I started a company called like WaterBear, and this is like a place where you can like launch your DeSci projects. So you can issue the tokens, you can collect the data sets, you can gamify things, you can have prediction markets around experiments. And so we're developing that. If you guys are interested or looking to get hired, come talk to us. Thank you guys. Yes?
In the prediction markets,
Yeah.
the value of a particular bet is significantly high. Can't that create an adverse incentive for the scientists and create junk science to support that hypothesis?
Yeah, I mean, you have to be careful on the oracle side of it. So if so that comes at the cost of the scientist / oracle discrediting themselves. So if like there's a prediction market on the sky is red, and then the oracle is like, yes, the sky is red, that project is tainted, and like let's say the scientist is the largest holder of that token. Now that token is worth 0.
How large? Like, where's the oracle getting the data?
Well, the oracle is getting the data from the scientist who closes the experiment. It depends on the type of bet, right? So like if it's purely computational, you can just say like this data, run this code, and like when the pool crosses 100 tokens in it or 100 data points in it, and we run this piece of code, will this code be yes or no? And so you're then waiting on the 100 pieces of data to fill up before that happens. Or it could be another type of market where it's like it requires some sort of value judgment.
What if you have the inverse, where the prediction market heavily predicts a failure of
Yeah.
the experiment? So the scientist at that moment is more incentivized to not succeed in the experiment that they're running. We're not, like, does that make sense? I'm not sure if I'm saying.
Not 100%.
If we have an experiment that we're running, we're saying that we're going to be able to synthesize this, some chemical, right? And the prediction market is like heavily, like the scientists can also buy in and say like, yeah, I'm going to predict that this is going to fail too. And now I have asymmetric upside if my own experiment fails.
Yeah.
Am I now incentivized to just not do good research and make money?
Yeah. So I mean, it's a good point. I think you can also have third-party people close it without the scientists doing it themselves. I think it's going to be dependent on the type of research that's being done, and also the credibility of the researcher. So it's not 100% perfect, but I think it's a bit of an experiment on how they're going to be closed. I'm hoping that all the things will resolve purely in code, so there's less bias towards it, and people move towards those types of things, but it's still yet to be determined.
We have more time for questions.
Yeah. Oh, no more?
Oh, we have more time for questions.
Oh, more time.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else?
Any other questions?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So you mentioned that you would ideally want to be able to vet all the results that are published with the code. So how does that, maybe this is similar to the previous question, how does that work for a lot of this biological science right now is heavily web-based? And so how can you ensure reproducibility? How can you vet that data when it requires access to a physical location, right?
Yeah. So I think one easy solution would just be to, instead of just doing it all in one location, you could have it done in 2 locations and make sure that it's basically agreeable. Sometimes it works better in some situations. Like Aura data, I think it works better. Something that's like very specific and requires a certain type of like machine or something, it doesn't work as well for. Yeah. I think things will tend towards this direction though, because things that happen on just one machine will just be thought as not credible. Like things that like aren't important. And so yeah, we'll see. I'm not 100% sure like how that's going to like play out, but I hope that like it's like a validator in a blockchain or something. Like things that happen across multiple types of like validation nodes are better, whereas things that are just validated on one aren't as good.
But so to have access to a wet lab in the first place, at least currently, you already have to have quite a bit of institutional knowledge. You have to buy into the current
Yeah, I think, okay, so two things. I think maybe you'll have like cloud labs that could happen. So you could just like upload your protocol and then there's more division. So like right now, a graduate student is basically doing like 10 different jobs, and DeSci will allow for more specialization in labor. So you could say like, oh, I'm just going to like write a Python script that will send it to the robot that will do it in the wet lab. And also this like doesn't work well for like all types of science, right? So like science is very broad and has all these different parts to it, and you know things that are very like if you require a particle accelerator, like it's not as easy. Whereas on the other side, if it just requires like baking soda and vinegar, that's easier to replicate, and there will be different variations of that depending on the type of project. And I think the biggest one is like there'll just be more specialization in labor. So when you're allocating tokens to people based on specific things, like right now, what does a grad student do? They come up with the idea, they collect the data, they do the analysis, they write the paper. But with like this approach to DeSci, you're like, we're gonna just allocate 20% of the tokens to people that collect the data. And anyone who collects the data can collect it. And so like, I'll just like spin up like whatever thing I'm trying to do. And then like, so you'll have people that are becoming expert data collectors. Yeah.
I mean, this is interesting that you're describing things with bullet points. So, like, I'm curious, what do you think are the kind of foundational issues that actually prevents a lot of things you're discussing from happening?
What's preventing things from happening? I think universities have just a lock on the labor market. So like, people that want to do science are probably already doing it in that in an underrated capacity. So they're sort of undervalued there, but they're happy. So I think that's one. Blockchain is always developing. People finding out about each other, like just like there's a lot of replication that happens, just the same people doing the same thing because they haven't like connected yet. I think what he was talking about earlier about like just science is hard and requires like a lot of like expertise is one. I think AI is going to like fix some of that though, like the methods thing and the data collection are like when you have an experiment, you're not going to come up with the methods anymore in the future. Like you're just going to like tell the AI what to do, what you want, and it's going to come right through. It's going to write like step 1, do this. Step 2, do this, and then it's going to send that to like the robot, which will be like, and like. But right now, like that pipeline is still developing. What else? I don't know. I'd be curious to like, hear what other people think of like what are the pros and cons of this approach.
Do you think are actually going to support DeSci? Because there's clearly a difference between
Sorry, I can't hear you.
what kind of, if you're to categorize or describe the kind of projects that will be best suited being funded and discovered this way. Right, so how would you describe that?
Oh yeah, so things that are like I'll take this out of the James. Like genomic stuff, I think is very well suited to that. Like you can upload, you can take a cheek sample and then have a machine do it in Boston or New York. Like those types of machines are replicatable, and it's very data driven. So lots of people can do it. I think fitness stuff, nutrition stuff, health records stuff, maybe like astronomy stuff, bird watching, plants, like anything that's like distributed will work well. And things that don't work are things that require like very, very, very specialized equipment. Do you want to take a stab?
Yeah, I was just going to say like in silico experimentation is really great for this because you can publish what your algorithms are to give you the results that you calculated. So like protein folding is a classic version of that. There's like Fold at Home, which is a decentralized piece of software that anyone can install locally and run on their own GPUs to do simulations of protein folding. That was used to help develop the mRNA vaccine as an example.
So rather than just have one big computer try to run everything, you just have one person on one thing at a time.
For sure, and you can imagine having millions of people running slightly smaller variations on their local machines, perhaps giving you an edge on finding the right target versus just a centralized supercomputer at Harvard.
You can have a bit more like directed evolution approach, where like you're testing out thousands of things in parallel, as opposed to just like one pipeline. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you mentioned this like democratization of resource allocation, and then you sort of solve the problem like homogeneous or I mean how do you contrasted this to
Yeah.
has better intuition for where we should be allocating money that we have.
Yeah.
So how do you contrast that with like the token owners and
Well, I think it'll be an experiment. I think you just get more from like the DeSci projects I've seen. Like the thing that's cool about them is like they pull from so many more threads than like a traditional science project does. So like instead of it just being like, oh, we're gonna do like related work and two people are gonna spend an afternoon. You have like 1,000 eyeballs that are like looking at related work to see if anything is interesting. Or like instead of just like one person coming up with ideas, you have like a huge number of people coming up with ideas. Cool. All right. Well, I think that's all. Thank you guys.